Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining. Today's session, we're going to talk about complete visibility and monitoring of hyper-converged, hybrid, and multi-cloud infrastructures. In particular, we're going to talk about Cruz Operations Center and the Nutanix Console. And Dorado Software is a technology alliance partner and a validated, integrated Nutanix-Ready solution. And we've built the console today to give you a consolidated view, a focused view across all of your hyper-converged infrastructure. So this is an end-to-end multi-cloud management and operations solution. And what we see on the right here, the complete HCI stack. So we're going to give you visibility to the Nutanix software. We're going to show you the networking aspects of your HCI, the compute, storage, hypervisors, as well as applications. On the networking side, your top-of-rack switches, they could be leafs, spines, or leafs and spines. We support a variety of equipment. The leading vendors are Cisco, Dell EMC, HP, Juniper, Lenovo. There's others. These are the main ones we support. On the compute side, and these are the compute resources in your stack, all of your servers. They can be HP, Dell EMC, Lenovo, Cisco. Really, any server built within the last 2 to 4 years will support the technology that we need to manage those servers from the BMC level. And on the Dell EMC side, that's iDRAC. On the HP, it would be something like ILO, Lenovo is XCC, and then Cisco is IMC. There's a variety of other names, but they all use the similar technology that allows you access at that level. And then we have the hypervisors, KVM, Hyper-V, HV, and ESX. So this is an umbrella management for converged operations. Single comprehensive view of your corporate, hyper-converged infrastructure and resources. We're going to show you details about your HCI infrastructure, monitoring, and performance. We'll touch on flexible log management and analysis, stack compliance and configuration and validation. We'll show some automation and operations configuration, direct integration to the computer hardware for visibility and even correlation of updates and configuration. And then there's external hybrid cloud integration support, multi-device update on configuration, and converged rack operations. So let's go ahead and jump into the demo portion. And so what you see here is our standard portal. A lot of the features you see across the top menu here, ending here with Nutanix Console. We're going to touch on some of those features, but this console that we're going to look at today is specifically focused around Nutanix and how we can manage that infrastructure. And so we've set up this page here to give you quick visibility. And a lot of our customers have large environments where they have many clusters. And so this is set up with that in mind. You can certainly do it with smaller environments, but you may have a geographic sort of layout where you want to see your clusters across a wide geographic area. It could be United States, as in this case, or it could be a building, or it could be a state, some geographic location. The example here, we have things separated out like California, the main data center in Texas. We're going to focus on the California side today, but this hierarchy view allows us to have a quick view into all of your clusters. You can organize these nodes however you like. It could be by location, it could be by IP address, subnet, a whole host of other options there, but in this case it's by location. I'm going to click on the California location, and so we can drill into that. But what you see here is this red, green, or yellow. So what happens is any device or cluster that's associated with that location, all of its events will roll up, so you can quickly get a view of the event status in that location. So it's a nice way to see at a glance where you might need to look in your network for problems that may be occurring. So let's just drive into California here. So here we see California in this 1.3n cluster. And so I only have one in this location, but what I can do is I can click California. You'll notice that the geographic location there changes as well. I have one cluster in California and then one that's specifically in the San Diego location. So let's just drill into the 3n one. I'll click that one specifically. What you'll notice is the screens change. They're showing the context for whatever I've selected. So again, you're drilling in and just getting that focused view. Let's just start with the topology side of things. You'll notice the topology is updated with the hierarchy structure of this cluster. Within this cluster, we have 3 servers noted by the NTNXA and the middle one and the third one here. You can hover over these and get quick performance and resource count here. You'll see things like VM counts and CPUs and those sort of things, memory, percent usage of memory, IOs, those kind of things. So it's a quick kind of a snapshot view, but you'll notice the color as well. It's telling us there's an alarm level here. What we can do here is drill into this. Let's take a server, for example. In this case, they are Dell servers. So we're going to have some iDRAC capabilities here. We'll see a little bit more of that in a minute. But I'm going to go, first of all, let's go to a details view to just show you that what you can jump over to. In terms of seeing these particular nodes here. So I'm going to go to details. And we see the screen pop up here now of just this particular node that's in this cluster. So I have some information here, but more importantly, I have a resource tree with various things that we know about for this specific server and its hypervisors and everything. And with the simple right-click options, I can come in here and do a right-click and, for example, get performance or key metrics data. So it gives me a way to further interrogate this box. So aside from details, I can actually drill into this device. So let's just go ahead and drill in. And now what we're getting is a graphical view of the server on top here. We're getting the VMs that are on this box. One happens to be a Cruz log manager, and the other one is the controller VM for Nutanix. And then we see the container that's associated with this here. We can actually drill in one more level here. And you can actually see the end-to-end connectivity. You can see all the way from the VM through the NIC, through the cloud for basically a VLAN, to the server and how it's attached. And then what we see as the server ports here and how they're attached to the top of rack switch. And so this is a little bit tiny here, but this is showing the actual ports. And so if you have any issues on these ports, they're being monitored. You would see events related to those. On this top of rack switch, you see that it's potentially having a problem here. You can also go to details here and take you right to that device and interrogate that top of rack switch and go and see what that alarm is. Specifically, I can see we've got a compliance failure. We ran a compliance scan against it and it failed, and it's telling us there's a problem. So it's a very easy way to further interrogate your cluster. Going back here, my breadcrumbs here, I'm going to go back to the beginning. You can also drill into your storage. And that's going to give us a view of all the disks that we know about. And simple hover options are going to tell you various things about, free disk space, used disk space, latency, IO latency, average writes. There's a lot of information you can just get on hover over if you think you're having an issue. Any alarm that would come in against the disk would also show up here as a red, yellow, or orange type of thing if there was an alarm there. So it's another way to get at your views here. So branching away from topology at this point, the cluster down below, I'm going to select on that again and go back to my home here to reset that. But what you'll see down below here, the context now is set to my Dorado 3N cluster. So I'm just seeing information about that specific cluster, just the alarms related to that cluster. And these are alarms around the servers, around the top of rack switch, the storage, anything related to that cluster would show up in this alarm window. On the right here, we have event history. These are events that happen that might be occurring on the system that are not necessarily alarm level. They're just events. And events can be defined as an alarm level, meaning it's a critical or higher type of severity versus just any general event. What you'll notice here is that we're getting events also from the things that we're monitoring for that device. And so you'll see this is a monitor attribute trend event name, meaning that some sort of, we have an interface monitor going out and monitoring all your interfaces. We're basically giving you an indication that something happened and it exceeded some trend value. It could be a bandwidth exceeded, could be, you're between 60 and 80%, you're above 80%. That will dictate what kind of alarm or event you get. And so you can basically have those on the screen so you can look into those. And you can hook those into our automation to go do something, email, notify, or send a service now, that kind of thing. But it's all in the context of that specific cluster at this point. Moving down the page here, We have our Nutanix asset portlet, and this is a customized portlet to show you just that one Nutanix asset. And what we're seeing here, you'll see here, this is the context of our cluster. And again, you have right-click options that you can go into and see just about anything or do just about anything against this cluster, anything from going into, for example, direct access. If you wanted to go to the Prism interface, in this case, you can go to HTTP. If you want to interrogate it through SNMP, you can go to the mid browser. You can go right on the command line. I can just show you that real quick. It's going to take us right into the command line of that box. I can run my own NCLI commands at this point if I wanted to. Other options here are listed out here to do various things. On the middle portlets here, you'll see the Nutanix physical host. Now, these are the physical servers that are associated to this cluster. These are the ones where we have gone out and discovered the BMC side of these servers. And so these are, as you can see, these are PowerEdge FC630s. These are all being managed through the iDRAC. And again, a simple right-click option. Before I right-click this, I want you to notice that we have Nutanix nodes. These are the logical server names based on what the hypervisor knows. So Nutanix knows these as, this name and this IP versus, 110.122.0.132 is this node at that IP. And so these are the three nodes. And so if I click here on a physical server, it then changes focus here to show me the associated Nutanix server name. So then I don't have to, correlate the numbers or anything. I just know that this is the controller VM node for this particular server. But what I can do on the server side is a lot of the same functionality I have with a switch I can do with a server. I can go out and I can run actions against this. I can get on the rack admin of this device and run rack admins right on the BMC if I need to. I can do change management. We can back up the server configuration profile for this device, and we may want to scan that, or we may want to check for changes. We can do that with change determination, periodic scanning, or we can set specific policies to go and check that server to make sure that it's in a compliant state. We'll look at that a little bit more in automation. I can do direct access. If I want to go right to the iDRAC UI, I can just click on that, or I can go right to the terminal session. So if I want to do a rack admin, I'll just show you that again. Similar to the Nutanix cluster, I can get right on there, and I'm now in the mode where I can run the rack admin commands. I can also come down here and get performance or any other of these items that you see listed here. Now, as we go over to the node, for example, I'll just show you some examples here. I'll click that. I have similar things. I can go and edit the details of this, similar to what we saw in the topology. I can edit it. I can go to the details. I can get performance. I'll just show you one here for performance. And so now I'm getting information that the hypervisor is telling me about this node. I can see CPU utilization. I can see the controller VM, how much it's using. There's another VM on here that's running, that's showing that as well. I/O bandwidth, also by the same items here. Not a whole lot going on right now. Here you see memory utilization overall, and then my controller VM versus this other OMNM application server. So another way to quickly get an interrogate node by node what's going on. And then down below here, we have the networking devices. So this is your top of racks. This could be your leaves, your spines, or both. But as you saw in the topology, you can drill into these and do a variety of things. You can go to the details of this panel and see the details of that device. You can run a script against it if you want to run some predefined action to go do something or show something up on the box. We have the same change configuration capabilities to scan for changes in the configuration or execute policies against it, direct access. All of the same things, backup and restore of the device are all at a simple right-click option. Down on the lower right here, we see the actual virtual machines. And so as I click over here on, say, for example, a server, you're going to see, again, the context changes again. And then what I see is just the VMs related to the server that I selected. So I can easily come in here and just do another, similar to topology, and do a quick show key metrics. And here I'm seeing the CPU, I/O latency, various things about that particular VM. So very detailed insight here. Down below here, we have a default dashboard, just showing general performance overall of your cluster. Various things that we collect here. And then we can also switch this over to a top talkers, and it will show us the interfaces and their status from a top talker point of view. So you'll see various things here about the interfaces on this particular cluster that give you quick insight into your cluster. Okay, that's a quick rundown on the infrastructure monitoring. One thing I didn't cover, which I'm going to cover in the next couple of screens here, is the actions. If you do want to execute scripts against your devices, for example, you may want to execute something against your top of rack. Let me just see if I can pick one here. See if we can find an interesting one. Let's just pick this one, for example. I may want to run something against my S4048s if that's my top of rack. Maybe I'd pick one or more of those. And it's going to give me a variety of options here about, maybe I want to set up a cluster-facing port, start range and an end range. So I would come in here and pick those ports. I could set up some other various attributes that are related to this script, including the VLAN that you want for the cluster-facing port, and then easily with an execute button or a schedule go out and push that against the device. So it's a very nice way to, you can either use some of the scripts that we've created, or you can manually create your own scripts to go and push configuration to either the servers related to this cluster or even the Nutanix device related to this cluster, the Nutanix operating system. You can push things to the top of rack and the servers very easily. So let's go on to our Syslog manager. So you may be interested in gathering logs from your Nutanix or your hyper-converged infrastructure. Well, here we have a very easy way to do that. We have an embedded log manager, and we can very easily display data about the logs that are coming to it. In this case, it happens to be logs specifically from a Nutanix cluster. There's a variety of filtering mechanisms here, by the way. Turn things on, turn things off, add filters based on whatever you think you need to see in the amount of data you're receiving. There's a variety of actions you can do over here for enabling, disabling, or adding filters and removing and toggling. So a lot of flexibility here. You can come in here and click on a specific node, and it will refocus that area. So you're seeing just items for that area. Right now, I think we're seeing mostly just syslogs, and so coming from our Nutanix cluster, but you have all those capabilities. Come in here and dive deeper into your data to find the logs that you think are important. I'm going to take some of these off here just to get back to our original state. But part of log management is, of course, there's a couple of key aspects. You're going to want to have control over what you tell the Nutanix cluster to send in terms of logs. Well, we have a whole bunch of preceded actions that let you do things. And I can come in here and I can actually do things like, and this is an example of how you can run an action against a target. I mentioned actions before, but I can say I want to execute this action, and I want it to run against my 3-node cluster. Simply select that. I could do it against more than one, but I can simply go out there and run this action. It's going to go and log into the Prism, and it's going to execute this action. Okay, and here you see now the actions come back. It's gone to NCLI, and it just simply run a simple command to list all, list everything basically. So here's the command that it sent, and here's the output. So very easy to see those kind of things. This could have been a configuration command, but in this case, it's just a show command. Configuration command would be something like activate all or activate a module, where you would come in and execute it, and then you would basically again target your cluster or clusters that you want, add them to your filter here, and then you would just pick your module, and then you can go and activate that, and it would start sending the appropriate information based on that information. So very easy to control this here with these actions, highly customizable. But on the second part of this is you need to be able to tell the actual log tool various things as well. How to check the status of one of your pipelines, the status of the database. There's a variety of actions we can run here as well that target specifically the log manager to do various things. One key one here is like the delete old syslog daily files. You want to maintain your database. This is a very easy way to do it, to prune off those old logs. And then you can all of these you can simply add to a schedule, and that way you're maintaining your logs per your requirements and what you need. Okay, moving on to the automation capabilities. What we see here are various portlets related to things you might want to do on the network. This is another portlet similar to the one we saw earlier, where we can go out and run various things against the top of rack switches. These are actions that are specifically built for that. And I already showed you an example of one of those. I won't go into it again here, but you can go and maybe configure some new server-facing ports. Maybe you need to configure a new top of rack VLT. That would this would be this action up here. So you could easily do that to affect your top of rack. Again, everything can be scheduled over here. We talked a little bit, touched on compliance. So here's a specific compliance screens for your top of rack and your servers. So we can come in here with our compliance and we can create these policies. We can create group policies, or we can create specific policies that you see here with like the BIOS secure boot. In this case, we're going to go out and we're going to scan all of your servers in this case for specific BIOS settings. We're going to basically scan the server configuration profile and make sure the settings are set the way we want them. And so what happens is when it fails, it will give you an event letting you know that a compliance policy failed. Now, you could see that in your alarm window and deal with it that way, but we prefer the automated way of doing that, which I'll show you here in a second. But you could also have compliance policies that run against your top of rack. Maybe you recommend a certain SSH settings. Maybe you have a group policy of things. Maybe you have certain SNMP you want in that box. You could create those policies and group them up and then have them execute, and then let you know which ones fail. And we can hook those failure events into our automation. And what we see over here on the right is our automation and event processing rules, an example of how this might work. And just to give you an idea, let's say on this BIOS secure boot policy, maybe it failed compliance. This is our automation that would go and resolve that problem. And so we simply come in here, we tell this event processing rule to, when our compliance policy fails, that's my triggering event, and it happens to be this particular policy about BIOS. I'm going to go run an action, and the action is going to be to email for one, and the next one is to do a restore. Now, in this case, it's going to do a restore of the compliant BIOS. So there's other things you can do with actions. It doesn't have to be a restore action. It can be another action that could maybe by a command line push those BIOS settings back out. But in this case, we're going to restore some BIOS settings that we backed up, and we called them the compliant BIOS, and they're just sitting there waiting. And when somebody calls them by that label, they can be pushed out to a box. So that's an example of our automation. All of the automation generally works that way. Any event or syslog can trigger the automation. And again, it can be an internal event, it can be an external event. An internal event is something like this compliance failure. An external event would be something like a link down or something like that. Okay, moving on to performance. We have a top-end performance. If you want to focus just on the performance of a single cluster, that's what you see here. We can gather things, at a dashboard view of all your clusters in a top-end kind of format. We see here a couple clusters here, top CPU, top memory, ping responses, bandwidth, which one's using the most, transmitted and received bandwidth. Got packet loss, interface errors, and temperature. So, this can either encompass all your clusters, or you can confine it to one cluster, depending on what you need to do. But it's another snapshot view into the overall performance of your cluster. On the admin side, we have a whole bunch of reports that can be run. You can create your own, or you can run some of the ones that we have here. These are specific for Nutanix if you want to see specific performance reports about your cluster. About various things, you can create a variety of custom reports here, but we have latency, CPU metrics, those kind of things. And then on the right here, we have our monitors that are monitoring these clusters, and you can affect the polling intervals or other attributes about the monitor, how these things are being monitored in this pane. And then finally, and I think I changed the time frame on this. All right, so this screen is going to show you all of the traffic flow that's flowing across your top of rack switches or switch, depending on if you have one or more, you can have these in here. Right now I have one top of rack switch, so we're gathering the flows across my top of rack switch, and you can see the interfaces that are being monitored across that particular device. So that's by subcomponent here. And what you see down below is we can see the applications flowing across the top of rack. We can see the protocol types. We can see the flow conversations, meaning between two endpoints. This could even come down to which VM and which external VM this traffic is going across, depending on what it is. And then absolute endpoints are shown here at the bottom. But you have additional capabilities to come in here, for example, and if you wanted to look at, this TCP port 2009, where's that traffic? I want to know more about that traffic. I can simply click into this and see my data over time. And I can even more specifically, what I'm seeing here is the top exporters of this traffic from what interfaces and the amount of data. But what if I want to see if there's a conversation with these two, I can see that, drill into that. So now what I see is where this traffic is going for this particular TCP port between 10.122.0.32 and 31. This is where most of this traffic is coming from. So it's a nice way to kind of drill into your traffic. You can also click on the search button here and search by specific IP, and it will show all the information about that particular device, all the conversations it's having, all the protocols, and all the data that it's transmitting in terms of the traffic flow captured data. Okay, that wraps it up for our overview of the Nutanix Console portlet. And I want to thank you again for watching. You can watch us next or see us next on May 7th through the 9th at Anaheim Convention Center. Feel free to drop by, ask some questions. Or if you have questions, I will hang on after this call and we can answer those questions. Okay, let's go ahead and open it up for questions. Feel free to raise your hand or type a question in the chat window and I will get to those. Okay, first question here. What type of hypervisors do you support? Good question. So the way we manage Nutanix is really independent of the hypervisor. The reason is that we discover the Nutanix software. And so once we discover the Nutanix software, all the underlying virtualization is really not relevant for what we gather. So I would say, any hypervisor that is supported, HV, KVM, Hyper-V, ESX, any of those should be fine because we are actually going into the software to manage it. All right, let's scroll down here through some questions. Question here is about how is it managed. So when we discovered the Nutanix software, it's through SNMP. We basically get at it from the SNMP point of view. There's actually two aspects to it. The initial discovery of the Nutanix software is via SNMP. So we go and interrogate and walk a whole bunch of MIBs to get a whole bunch of information. There's a little bit of monitoring that way, but we have a direct integration via REST and right into Nutanix as well to allow us to pull additional information. But again, that's all right into the software. So it's basically managed via SNMP, REST, and we do attach a CLI interface, as you noticed. So we will have the CLI and CLI management interface that allows us to get onto the command line. That's through an SSH protocol, so we can run NCLI commands, and that's how we were doing the syslogs to set up the device to send us syslogs. So actually, there's four main interfaces. So there's the SNMP, there's the CLI, which is SSH. There is the ICMP, we can ping it, and then there is the HTTPS, which if they've added that interface during discovery time, you'll have the ability to cut through directly through to the Prism console. So you'll have access to that as well. Next question here is on the servers. How do you bring those servers in? Well, we have an algorithm that will allow us to bring those servers in, but essentially, I was mentioning some protocols that maybe the latest generation servers in the last few years all support this protocol called Redfish. And so we can get into, we have that integration, that interface that will allow us to go out and discover those servers using that Redfish protocol at that management BMC level. And it gives us all of the access that you can basically get with using the iDRAC interface as if you were to do it manually. The added benefit there is that you're going to have access to all of your servers, and you can do things like pushing. If you have the Redfish command is one way. That's a REST-based interface that we've integrated with, but you can also attach a command line interface there to give you rack admin command lines, so you can actually push commands directly through the iDRAC through the rack admin, and you can do read commands or whatever you need to do, but get at it that way. But the Redfish protocol goes out and discovers, and that's where we get the inventory about the hardware and the CPU and everything about that box. We can gather performance data. We can actually do BIOS push to those boxes as well. If you need to upgrade the BIOS, we can do that, and you can do it in bulk. So you can download or have the BIOS staged and ready to go, and you can push all that out all at the same time to multiple servers or your entire stack or multiple stacks all at the same time, depending on how you want to do that. Just one side note here is that we can also manage servers in a slightly different way if we want to go through the OS, if it's a Windows or Linux box. So even if you have VMs on here, and maybe you want to get stuff from the outside in, basically from the Linux or what the OS knows about the VM, we can discover that way as well. And I think the last question here looks like about leaf and spine. What do you support? We're a multi-vendor product. We support thousands of models across many vendors. I mentioned a few here, but the main ones are the Cisco's, the Dell's. There's some Lenovo's, and we support them all basically. And so general features we get with those are the command line access, SNMP access. We can fully monitor all the interfaces on those. We will pull in all of the links for anything it's attached to, layer 2 or layer 3. So your Ethernet links between your TORs and your top of racks and your servers are supported, and you'll show those on topology, as well as if you got layer 3 going on between your leaf and spines, we'll pick those up as well, and so you'll have a full view to your topology. Okay, that does look like it for all of the questions. I want to thank you all for watching and waiting and answering the questions. If you have any more questions, feel free to reach out to us. We're more than happy to provide an additional demo or provide you with a trial package so you can exercise some of this in your own environment. And I look forward to talking to you in the next session. Thank you.